country bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. Them country bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. This a we we the fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a we the fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a me name is Pufa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. No, tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the help and the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. Them country bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. This a we the fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a we the fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a me name is Pufa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. No, tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the help and the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. Them country bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. This a we the fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a we the fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a me name is Pufa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. No, tell me about maritime area. Long time.
To the news, we are broadcasting on XTV Belize, simulcasting on Creme Radio. You could download the XTV Belize app or the Creme Radio app, or with a live stream on Facebook, XTV Belize page, YouTube, XTV Belize channel. Our guest will be a little late because I never factor in that the UK changed their time to. But we have the usual people who resist. Our co-host, Brother Mutota, revolutionary out of the Twin Islands of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and our guest will be Sister Esther Xosei, Reparationist, representing the Caribbean Diaspora out of the UK. Good morning, Brother Ako.
Morning, Sister YaYa, and good morning to our listening audience. It's good once again to be on Sunday Review.
How do you feel this morning, Brother Ako?
I am well. I'm well.
You ready for us with them Caribbean stories? What are the stories that they come from this morning?
Well, the stories this morning, we have some stories from Bermuda, Venezuela, St. Vincent, Barbados, Grenada, St. Kitts, and Guyana.
Okay, so go ahead. Start then. You got time.
We will start with possibly one. Hold on. We started possibly one from Barbados this morning, which I think is a very important subject, because it has Caribbean-wide ramifications. And last week, if you recall, we dealt with an issue of an outbreak of foot and mouth disease among children, which it seems that the Caribbean is plagued by health crises, but it is alarming when children are more impacted, and this seems to be happening more frequently in the Caribbean. So last week on our news segment, we read a piece that indicated that there was an outbreak of foot and mouth disease in Grenada. The headline we want to begin with today is from Barbados, and it's the Barbados Association of Medical Practitioners warns of child obesity crisis in Barbados. And even though this is a report out of Barbados, it is a problem throughout the Caribbean. Overweight children and the consequential health crisis that is resulting from this. So I will begin by reading, Barbados is facing an urgent health situation that could condemn a generation of young people to early heart disease, diabetes, and stroke if childhood obesity is not dramatically reduced, warns President of the Barbados Association of Medical Practitioners, Dr. Linda Williams. Delivering the feature address at the Barbados Heart and Stroke Foundation's 40th anniversary luncheon held at Sandals, Barbados, yesterday, she called for an all-of-society response to what she described as a Category 5 NCD, non communicable disease hurricane sweeping across the island. She urged the country to set a target to cut child obesity in half within the next 5 years. For the sake of our children, we must reduce childhood obesity by 50% in the next 5 years. We're in an NCD, non-communication disease tsunami. It's urgent. The time is now to act. A part of the reason for this is poor diet. The BAMP has painted a vivid picture of the intergenerational toll of poor diet, physical inactivity, and neglect of medical advice, using a series of real-life composite stories to show how lifestyle diseases destroy families. She described Marin, a middle-aged woman who suffered a heart attack after years of ignoring medical advice. The brother Granty, who dismissed modern medicine, later developed cancer and diabetes. And DeAndrea, Marin's 15-year-old niece, weighing 170 pounds and skipping physical education classes because her knees hurt from excess weight. We are now developing maturity onset diabetes in the young, Dr. Williams stated. Children who should be type 1 diabetics, if diagnosed at all, are now presenting with adult type diabetes at a very young age. She cautioned that this trend meant children were likely to experience diseases of aging decades earlier. So this, I would end it here because I think it says, carries the basic message of what is happening in the Caribbean. And this is a very serious issue. And I will tell you this, it is not just Barbados. The same is happening in Trinidad and in other parts of the Caribbean. It is acute in Barbados. I remember Professor Beckles indicating that Barbados has become the capital of the Caribbean for amputations because so many people have diabetes. So this is a very serious issue, and the Caribbean need to really begin to look at this, because if we don't, we will not have a future if our children are impacted by these kinds of health crises. So I don't know if you want to comment on that, Sister YaYa, or you want me to move on to the next article.
Next story, Brother Akko.
I said I don't know if you want to make a comment on it, or you want me to.
I'm saying that the same is true in Belize. I will make news from time to time. We'll see the children, we'll see them eating the fast food. It's a reality. I have to step away real quick. It's starting to rain and the windows are open. So go ahead, Brother Akko. I'm going to close my window there.
All right, okay. So I'll read the next piece. And this comes out of Bermuda. And it's a campaign that explores social housing as a solution for the homelessness crisis. Again, which is a Caribbean-wide problem in which we are seeing a number of people for various reasons living on the streets with no housing and consequential health and other kinds of challenges for the society. And so this is a campaign that is called the Bermuda is Love Housing Campaign. And it begins with the commodification of housing in Bermuda will be challenged as part of an upcoming campaign. Bermuda is Love will lead the charge on the Bermuda is Home drive that also advocates for housing as a human right. There are 4 themed events taking place throughout the month of, well, this happened earlier this year, focusing on the local housing problems, its history, solutions, and the future. Mr. Aaron Critchlow of Bermuda is Love said the island needed transformation relative to housing and not tinkering. He added, in Bermuda, housing is treated not as a necessity but as a financial asset. It's a system where profit comes before people. Those therefore unable to meet rising rents or mortgage payments are left behind, excluded by a market driven by speculation and inequality. Throwing some money into this unjust market will not solve the crisis. The root causes, unregulated markets, speculative investment, and deep economic inequality must be addressed. Critchlow said that Bermuda must reimagine housing through the lens of justice, equality, and community, and consider a social housing program that prioritizes human dignity over profits. He He added in cities like Vienna, Singapore, and Amsterdam have shown that when housing is built for people, not markets, entire communities thrive. This campaign is not just about awareness, it's about building collective consciousness and power and to shift culture and a demand for justice. We believe that housing is a human right and that every Bermudan deserves to feel secure, respected, and own a home. The government said it is committed to modernizing the rental legislation to better serve landlords as well as their tenants through the Landlord and Tenant Act. Meanwhile, more affordable housing is expected to be made available after the Bermuda Housing Corporation received a 17 million funding from the budget last year. Mr.
No, Brother
Krishna,
Akko,
yes?
I didn't find that out until maybe within the past 5 years. I didn't know that housing was a human right.
Well, it should be a human right. I mean, in every civilized society, and part of when we did our election campaign, we said that housing should be a right. I mean, the basic tenet even of Christianity and other doctrines is food, shelter, and clothing. And most religions, religious philosophies feel that as a basic right of humans, food, shelter, and clothing. However, what has happened in these capitalist societies is that housing, the basic rights are no longer guaranteed because people see these things as ways to make money and to capitalize on. And so because our governments are following this new neoliberal economic model, we have fallen into the trap of not seeing housing as a social right. So food, if you read the Bible and you read the Quran, it tells you that the earth was provided so that the human being could be provided with food, shelter, and clothing. And yet, even though we are supposed to be advanced as civilizations, here we have situations like homelessness, children going hungry every day, when the earth is abundant. And that is because of how the resources are organized, where one set of people who control capital, they monopolize resources in a way that it benefits them disproportionately. And so this is why when we spoke about a new society in our context in Trinidad, this is what we were speaking about. How do we provide for the basic needs of the human in a society, and not provide for provide for a few who have wealth or if you have access to wealth and power could benefit financially and otherwise. And so the housing crisis is a direct result of the capitalist system of economics and politics that we live under. This is why, for example, Cuba is so despised by the US and other imperialist powers, because Cuba sees housing as a right. In fact, one of the early tenets of the Cuban Revolution, when Fidel came to power in the 1950s, 1959-60, was that each child in Cuba would be guaranteed certain kinds of nutrition in what he referred to as enough milk to make sure that you have enough nutrition. We no longer give guarantees to these in the society, right? We no longer give guarantees like these. And so we have to look at this as a way of fulfilling the basic needs of humanity by providing food, shelter, and clothing.
And it was one of the mandates for the new mayor-elect out of New York was affordability of housing.
Exactly.
It's always relevant.
Exactly. It is always relevant. And this is what one has to understand. So this is why, as much as we sometimes talk about consciousness raising and all of these things, we also have to study the politics, because there is a saying, whose bread I eat is whose song I sing. If a person is not in a situation where they have proper housing, a proper meal, and and healthcare and things like that, you can talk whatever consciousness you want, you're not going to get that person to respond. So we also always have to keep that in mind, that a society should guarantee the basics for all human beings in that society, irrespective of their status or their age or their ethnicity or their economic or social status. Okay? So the next article I'm going to read is from Venezuela. and the headline is U.S. military action against Venezuela would impact all of Latin America. This came from the Caribbean. And this came from the Venezuelan Foreign Minister Ivan Gil, right? So Venezuelan Foreign Minister Ivan Gil on Friday reiterated that any foreign military aggression against his country would have major repercussions across Latin America and the Caribbean. During his remarks at the parliamentary meeting of the Greater Caribbean in Defense of Peace, Ambassador Gil emphasized that Caribbean nations would be the first to suffer the consequences of a U.S. military actions against the Bolivarian Revolution. He reminded Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago and other U.S. aligned governments that they would not escape the fallout of an intervention or a rupture of the peace in the Caribbean. Gil said that the Venezuelan people possess a strong historical, patriotic, and sovereign spirit, which has allowed the Bolivarian Revolution to consolidate a civilian, military, and police unity capable of confronting any geopolitical challenge. The Venezuelan diplomat added that his country will continue along the path of the Bolivarian Revolution under any circumstance, as it has done successfully for the past 26 years in the struggle against the United States and its European allies. Venezuela also went on to strip the citizenship of young Uchiecha of his nationality for calling for a foreign invasion. Previously made a call for cooperation with foreign forces for a military occupation of Venezuela. That came at a time when the United States maintains a naval and air deployment in the Caribbean Sea that Caracas used an attempt to remove President Maduro from power. So this is part of the article again, and the ambassador is very, very correct. And it harks back to our statement on my own country, Trinidad and Tobago, and how shameful we feel by the position and the attitudes adopted by the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. In the interview that I did, which you referred to, I mentioned specifically the fact that that regime that we have in Trinidad now has always had hostility to CARICOM, because it's very much an ethno-centered kind of ideology that drives them. And so the idea that they would take a progressive position is foolhardy. And so just recently, I think in today's newspaper, I read that there were drones, U.S. drones flying across the territory of Trinidad and Tobago. And I don't think these people appreciate that Venezuela is at its point about 9 miles from Trinidad. And if a war were to occur, and which is what seems to be happening, or Venezuela to be attacked, the consequences of Trinidad will be very severe. I have said to people that we could see mass immigration from Venezuela, which would transform the population of Trinidad and Tobago in many, many different ways. One of the things I think people didn't realize is in the wake of the collapse of the Grenadian Revolution, a lot of the weapons that the military had flowed into the Caribbean. And so we had a lot of heavy military type weaponry emerging in different parts of the Caribbean involved with the use of crime. And if Venezuela were to be attacked, it would be 20 times worse. And so that was the statement and a warning from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Bolivarian government of
Sister Esther has joined us. Good morning, Sister Esther.
Morning, Sister Esther.
Greetings.
So, Sister YaYa, how much more time do we have?
We have another, I would say, 5 to 7 minutes. But Brother Akko, we keep sharing about the potential war. Even though war has not been declared, I would say war has been declared based on the actions. Like, we don't need somebody for formula to tell we war has been declared. Based on the movement, don't you think war has been declared?
Yeah, war has been declared. Well, the reality is that it is more than 25 years ago war has been declared on Venezuela. first it began with the sanctions by George W. Bush. Then that was followed by Barack Obama declaring Venezuela a threat to the security of the United States. How did Venezuela become that? We don't know. And that was, well, even before that, Bill Clinton, then George Bush, the young Bush, then Obama, okay, then Biden, Trump, and all of them have continued this policy of aggression against Venezuela for the last 25 years. And we know why, because one of the things I think people do not understand is that at one point in time, well, before Chavez, the Venezuelan oil industry was totally controlled, not controlled, dominated by the United States. And a lot of the the refineries in Texas, they were particularly designed to refine the heavy crude from Venezuela. When Chavez came to power, he nationalized the oil industry and said that all oil companies operating in Venezuela must turn over to the Venezuelan government 50% at least of its resources. And so a lot of the American companies did not like that. They left. And so a lot of these refineries were idle or functioning at minimal in the United States. So the fact that this pretext about drugs, everybody talking about drugs, we know what it is. It's economics. The United States is in decline economically, and it is in need of Venezuelan oil resources and other kinds of resources that Venezuela has. So yes, a war has been declared over the past 25 years through sanctions. In fact, at one point they even overthrew Chavez, I think, for a day or two, and the military freedom and so on. So this has been an ongoing battle in Guyana, against Venezuela. Sorry.
Let me ask Sister Esther quickly, representing the Caribbean diaspora. What has been your read in listening to the news as it relates to U.S., Trinidad and Tobago, Venezuela, the impact on fishers? What has been your personal read or the vibes in the UK? People talk about it. People have anything to say about it?
A lot of the Caribbean diaspora communities are talking about it, but it's not a wider kind of Caribbean or Pan-African even conversation as yet. And that might be because many people are not necessarily still connected into politics back home in terms of the countries of origin or where, parents or grandparents, depending on what generation we are engaging in. But certainly we're very conscious of it. Those of us who do have connections with family and communities back home in the Caribbean, which is a home away from home for some of us. We're very much concerned with what we're seeing with the aggression, of course, using this false narrative about tackling drugs. I mean, the US tackling drugs when it has been one of the biggest supporters of the trafficking of beneficiaries of the trafficking of drugs from South America in particular and other parts of the Caribbean. So we're not fooled. We're not fooled. We know that this is a geopolitical move, and obviously it is about resources and trying to gain access to resources and utilizing, I think, a very fragile Caribbean region, despite the strength of the region and the resistance of our people there in terms of what's happening. So we're very clear. And obviously the vulnerabilities that are there, the climate and ecological vulnerabilities, we've just obviously witnessed Hurricane Melissa and the devastation that it has wrought on particular countries and communities in the region, which will only set back, I think, our movements even further.
Thanks, Sister Esther. Go ahead, Brother Akko. I think I was squeezing 2 or 3 more.
Yeah. Well, the next one is from Guyana, and it's an ongoing situation in Guyana which should be concerning. We don't have all the facts, but last week we spoke about the fact that the the leader of the opposition in Guyana was charged and is being and there's an attempt to extradite him and his father to the U.S. for charges on drug trafficking, and this is why this is important, because the fact that I don't know, as I said, we are not sure who these people are. They are business people in Guyana, but you have to be always careful whenever the U.S. is involved and targeting a leader and accusing him of drug trafficking. You always have to be careful and treat that with some degree of skepticism. So the headline on this one is Guyana in turmoil after opposition leader arrested and faces U.S. extradition. Right. Azudin Mohammed had emerged as a surprise contender in the presidential elections and claims political persecution. Guyana has been thrown into political turmoil following the arrest and possible extradition to the United States of the country's main opposition leader just 2 months after he emerged as a surprise contender in the presidential election that kept incumbent Irfan Ali in power. Azruddin, 38, and his father Nazar Mohammed, 73, two of Guyana's wealthiest figures, thanks to their gold mining empire, were arrested on October in the capital, Georgetown, in response to a formal extradition request from the U.S. government. Facing 11 charges in a Florida court, including money laundering, bribery, and tax evasion, they were released later the same day after posting bail of 150,000 Guyanese dollars each. Mohammed has claimed that they are victims of political persecution by Ali's government. The government is fully behind the sanctions and has agents working in the U.S., he told local media. So this, let me just read a bit more. In a situation where the status quo in Ghana is being challenged, said Peter Wickham, a political scientist and director of a polling company, Mohammed founded a party and announced his candidacy just 3 months before the presidential election, breaking with the country's long-standing two-party system that has traditionally pitted the president's PPPC, broadly backed by the Indo-Guyanese population, against the APNU, generally supported by Afro-Guyanese voters. Mohammed urged Guyanese to reject tribal voting, running on a populist and anti-establishment platform. He promised to push for the renegotiation of the oil deal, despite the country's newly discovered oil wealth. More than half of its population still lives in poverty. He hoped to become a kind of balance of power for whoever won the election, but the result ended up being better than he expected, Wickham said. The incumbent parties won 36 of the 65 seats. Now, this last part here is very important, that he called for the renegotiation of the deal. Now, all those who are familiar with that contract that Exxon has signed, and you know we had Vince Adams from Guyana here a couple of weeks ago on the show, and Vince was at the time the head of the environmental agency in Guyana, and made certain proposals to protect the Guyanese environment and the Guyanese people from oil spills, and he was fired by the government. And so this part that I read here about Azudin looking to renegotiate the deal with Exxon, because it is a very bad deal. It is one of the worst deals ever signed by a government with a multinational corporation. This is extremely bad. And so the poverty that he spoke about, I was in Guyana like 2 months ago, and I saw, you would not believe the conditions that exist in Guyana. You would not believe that this country is this oil-rich country, right? And then you can also see the corruption. There's a highway that they built that I think when Ruby was, they called it the concussion highway. And the taxi I was driving, he said, I'll take you on the highway. Brand new highway, hundreds of millions, and it's the most bumpiest road you could ever ride on in anywhere. And so this is why I said I don't know all the circumstances, all the facts, but the fact that the United States is trying to extradite somebody who is calling for the renegotiation of an oil deal, it tells me that there, as we say in Trinidad, there is something more in the mortar beside the pestle. And so we have to treat this with some degree of skepticism.
We're just
So,
about out of time, Brother Akko.
yeah, so this is the last one I would read. There was one
Okay.
more that I wanted to read, but this is the last one I would read.
To get Sister Esther's maternal and paternal lineage to the Caribbean is from Guyana and Barbados. Sister Esther, you wanted to add any 2 cents to that last Caribbean news story that Brother Akko just reported on?
I just support what's been said. I mean, I know we've been discussing it in my household, for instance. So one thing I know is that this particular leader is very engaged with communities at the grassroots level. He has a lot of support, I'm told, in some of the most oppressed communities. And so the fact that he's calling for a renegotiation of that oil deal, the contracts that were signed, I think there's definitely more to this story than what we're being told. And it is, in my view, about removing somebody who is challenging the status quo out there in a way that is going to be more responsive and reflective of the views of communities on the ground who are not benefiting from this deal at all and who actually stand to lose the most, especially in terms of the climate and ecological dimensions of, you know, the proliferation of oil and gas. In a time when we're becoming far more environmentally and ecologically conscious as peoples across the planet. And we know that this dominant model of capitalist exploitation and extraction is no longer sustainable for our planet and for us as a people.
Thank you. Good, Brother Akko. So, Brother Akko, as always, you have more stories to report than we have time in the half an hour. But Brother Akko shared from news stories from Bermuda, Venezuela, Barbados, and Guyana this morning, so that we could see the connections as a people, and to kind of flesh it more beyond the news headlines that we will get in traditional legacy media. When we come back, we'll have Sister Esther introduce herself, and then we'll talk more in the next hour about the cooptation of African emancipation, African reparation by states and by organizations within the region. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
Personally, I want to thank the GOB, Government of Belize, for giving Ecumenical College its fair share of these Chromebooks.
We used to get our work done and learn on the typewriter. In the last 25 years, we have seen a complete transformation.
It is my esteemed pleasure to give a heartfelt thank you to the Ministry of Education and most notably to the Minister of Education, Mr. Rekenya, and his team for this tremendous donation to our school and our students. Please note that this gesture speaks volume to your dedication to our education system.
All right, on the one fun day on, the window open and the light may turn off. It looks like you listen to me, Jamie.
Not only that, I even get a new coffee mug. We keep my coffee hot all day.
I'm impressed. You don't look like you're so hard here.
Better than that, BL can change my meter to one of their new smart meter. They call it the AMI.
Oh, I hear about it on TV for BL. How do you know?
Yes, man. They don't reach the money better to change it right now. Let's go check it out.
Hey guys, I'm almost done here.
So that when you reach my area,
we're upgrading meters across Belize, house by house, business by business. Always look out for BL logo, uniforms, and IDs. BL will make you know when we're in the area. The EMI meter rollout is a part of BL strategy to modernize our energy services.
You don't need to come in at my house, right?
Come in at your house, boss, only if you got something good for you.
BEL, bringing you a brighter tomorrow.
Want all the postpaid perks without the commitment? Now you can with smart supercharged prepaid plans. All the talk, text, and data you need. No contracts, no hassle. Pay upfront for your package and enjoy total freedom. No commitments. Just simple, flexible plans that fit your life. Pick your power, Core, Edge, or Prime. Prepaid plans, ready when you ready. Commit to no commitments and get yours today. Dial 7526 or *100 #key, use the Smart app, or visit a Gimme Dollar agent to purchase today. Smart, bringing people together.
At Atlantic Bank, your convenience is our priority. Our contact center is designed to enhance your banking experience. With a wide range of customer service options, you save time and effort. You can easily call in to block or unblock your debit and credit cards, perform account inquiries, and access detailed card information. Whether you need assistance with online banking, merchant support, or general inquiries, our team is ready to help. For added convenience, if all operators are busy, you can leave your number and an operator will return your call as soon as possible to ensure you receive the support you need. Depending on your transaction type, we may need to verify your identity through a set of security questions. And remember, Atlantic Bank will never request your username or password for Atlantic Online via phone call, text, or email, ensuring your personal information remains safe and secure. Our support team is available Monday to Friday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. in both English and Spanish. Simply dial 223-1212. This is a dedicated line for our contact center. Atlantic Bank is committed to providing you with exceptional service and the tools you need to manage your finances conveniently and securely. Take full advantage of our easy-to-use contact center services today.
Atlantic Bank, building the future together.
Tired of replacing light bulbs? LEDs are what you need. LEDs last up to 30,000 hours. That's 30 times longer than incandescent bulbs, and up to 8 times longer than compact fluorescents. So less changing and less trash. Planet Earth thanks you. And the LED experts at Brothers Habet and Habet will help you find the best LED solution with colors for every room and mood, starting as low as $6.95. You can even get LED strips for home, office, and industrial use. So say goodbye to fluorescent tubes forever. And because they use up to 90% less energy, you save money. Money you can spend on other things. So head to Brothers Habet or Habet and Habet today. You can also call, email, or Facebook us. Have a brilliant day.
Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This time me name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. No, tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. Them country bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. This time we we the fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This time we we the fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This time me name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. No, tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. Country bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. This time we the fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This time we the fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This time me name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. No, tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. Them country bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. This time we the fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This time we the fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This time me name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. No, tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head and the billies and dollar because to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This time we a figure. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time me name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. So don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head and the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. Country bad love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. This time we a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This time we a fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time my name is Pupa.
Welcome back to Sunday Review, where we make sense of the news. Sister YaYa, Marin, Coleman. We have Brother Mutota, and our guest this morning is Sister Esther Xosei, no stranger to Sunday Review viewers, radio listeners, and those streaming online. She was our 2024 African Emancipation Day guest speaker in Belize. Sister Esther, tell us a little bit about yourself. What you've been up to? You've been doing a lot.
Oh gosh, I'm basically a reparationist. Primarily everything I do is about reparations in a transformational way, because I know that's a term that gets bandied about a lot and it means a lot of different things to different people, but I see reparations as a world remaking transformational movement, global movement, that is about changing the world and the way that we live and relate to each other in the world. So it is about systemic change. That is what I do. I'm a jurisconsult by profession, which is a specialist lawyer or advocate in jurisprudence, the science and philosophy of law. And I educate a lot about reparations to try and raise consciousness so that people can take action as part of reparations movements and Pan-African movements wherever we are.
Sister Esther, I've been asking you to come on for a while to have this particular conversation about the co-optation of African reparation organizing movements, African emancipation in the Caribbean specifically by state and regional organization. How would you define co-optation? And I'll ask Brother Akka the same thing.
Well, for me, co-optation is very much linked to other terms that we use, such as movement capture. And in the context of this conversation, we also recognize elite capture and state capture. And it's where, if I talk about co-optation specifically, it's about where people who are engaged in various struggles for social and economic justice, say, become co-opted by institutional players, by financial and economic elites, by political elites, in order to capture whatever the cause is that people are part of. Now, the term movement capture is a term that we use a lot in our own movement building in the UK and beyond. And it's a term that has been popularized by a scholar activist in the US called Megan Ming Francis. She's actually a professor. And she coined it in some groundbreaking research on how wealthy funders redirect grassroots movements. And so in Megan Ming Francis's analysis, movement capture is when the funders and elites try to change the priorities of a grassroots movement away from what the activists themselves deem to be important, okay? And in particular, she studied the NAACP in the 1920s, and she found a pattern that has been repeated throughout history. That is, that when movements face financial crisis, they often become, courted by funders, philanthropic organizations, political elites who offer resources, but those resources come with strings attached. And those strings attached are designed to obviously meet people's material needs, basically a struggle for survival, but also it's about redirecting those movements or campaigning formations, those struggles away from their more liberatory and emancipatory system kind of changing potential. So if we think about it within the context of the Caribbean and African reparations, and in particular how it's working with, say, Emancipation Day, which is what you're also focused on, we can clearly kind of see how that is occurring, particularly with states. So the idea about movement capture is that the movement itself becomes captured. So Emancipation Day is not just an activity by itself, it's part of a wider movement. We might talk about liberation movement, decolonization movements in the or anti-colonial movements in the Caribbean, and the movements themselves are what I think we need to focus on, because the movements themselves often emerge because of the inequalities in a society and the fact that total change and transformation has not yet occurred, and oftentimes there might be a kind of going back on some of, or undoing, let me say, some of the gains of revolutionary struggles in the region. But movement capture is also connected to elite capture, which is whereby elites in any society, whether they are political elites or economic elites or academic elites, they basically put themselves in a position where they're able to speak for the oppressed and for movements in a particular context, and also redirect strategies and often appropriate or draw down resources, human, material and otherwise, to themselves to fund and resource their own strategies and tactics. Now, the problem with elite capture is the question of whose vision of change, whose vision of liberation is really being centered. And if you're from political elite or economic elite class, oftentimes it will be your own class interests or whatever struggle or intersectional interests we may be focusing on. And so oftentimes your strategies and your tactics will not actually meet the needs of the most oppressed or the masses. I know people don't like to talk about masses anymore, but literally the majority of people in a society who are not in that elite position. And that's why it's so dangerous. And then the state capture is when states themselves capitalize and appropriate the revolutionary language and discourses and aspirations of mass movements and struggles in a society, and seek to put themselves in the position of being the key decision makers. But again, with most states, even some of the most socialist or revolutionary states, you always have that class struggle. And I know that the Caribbean is a very, we talk about class struggle. They're very, very Caribbean societies are very class stratified societies. And so I think we need to recognize all three dimensions of the capture when thinking about what co-optation looks like. Because if we don't recognize that, we won't always see when it's happening, because many of those people who are engaged in movement capture or elite capture or state capture, they might sound reasonable people. They might be people who are well credentialed in a society. They might hold, particular social or political or economic influence, and therefore might be deemed to be doing a good thing or something progressive. And so I think just having that clarity and being able to clearly analyze whose interest and whose class interests in particular are being served, especially where we're living in societies that are majority African Caribbean heritage, or, societies racialized as Black. That's when it might be more difficult to see, because it might seem like, yeah, but we're all on the same side, or we're all the same people, or we're all from the same society. But actually, it is about recognizing, no, we're not all the same, even when we may be of the same racial group.
Wow, big thanks for that holistic response, Sister Esther. Brother Akko, coming from the Black Power movement, I don't think Unamidi use movement capture or cooptation as the wording or terminology. What wording Unamidi use? Because I know the same thing may happen then.
Well, we call it back in the day infiltration. That's what we did. And so there were many attempts to infiltrate the movement by state actors and non-state actors. I think we always have to keep in mind what is at stake. When we start movements, whether it's the Black Power, as we call it, or the reparations movement, or any kind of movement, it is always about power. Because these movements are started because the way power, whether it's political power, economic power, cultural power, is distributed, is not equitable. So a movement begins to wrest power. Okay. Now, if you look in the case of the Black Power movement, after one of the demonstrations, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago made a great speech and saying that he was for Black Power. But his definition of Black Power was opposed to what we were saying. He had been in power for 14 years by that time. The education system was teaching us Columbus discovered Trinidad and Tobago. Right? We still had an arrangement with the church called the Concordat, in which elite schools were controlled by the religious denominations. Okay? We still had a situation where in schools, children will be calling each other Blackie Kobo. A Kobo is a crow, picky head. So the movement spoke to these things because the system of power that we inherited was a colonial system of power that imposed these twisted and distorted values of Black inferiority or African inferiority. And to some extent, the Indians suffered some level of inferiority, but not in the same extent that the Africans did. So the movement came on that kind of, if you want to call it, emotional kind of upswing, and immediately found resonance in the population, support in the population. And so the elites then began to develop their own definition of Black Power. They also began to clothe themselves in the symbols of the movement. You know, we advocated, for example, that why should we be wearing suit and tie, what we call monkey suits and tie in a tropical environment? Why should we be wearing those things? And so the elites, and we advocated the dashiki and other forms of dress as formal dress. So what did they do? They began to create something called the shield jack as the form of dress and so to compete with the dashiki and other African forms, you know. So there was this infiltration. There were even ministers in the government because there was a particular minister who grew a beard because most of us had these long beards and afros. And he had his afro and his beard. And he was the man, they say, well, he was the Black Power man in the government. So you always had that kind of an infiltration, right? And I'll give you another thing that happened, right? The Sixth Pan-African Congress is a classic case of how the state then decided to dominate a particular movement. The Pan-African Congress, after the ones in 1900, I think the last one took there was about 4 or 5. And for a number of years, there was no Pan-African Congress. So the radicals of the Caribbean and other radicals decided, you know, we are going to organize the Sixth Pan-African Congress, right? And they got some support from Julius Nyerere to hold it in Tanzania, the Sixth Pan-African Congress. The Caribbean organization, which my organization was part of, National Joint Action Committee, UC Squayana Askria in Ghana, Walter Rodney, Ulimo in St. Vincent, Bobby Clark in Bab, all these organizations formed something called the Caribbean Steering Committee to organize the Caribbean delegation to go to the Sixth Pan-African Congress. The Caribbean governments were very uneasy about it. Julius Nyerere was invited to visit Trinidad. He came to Trinidad on a state visit, got some loans from the Trinidad and Tobago government, and that's how we got tilapia. I think they brought some tilapia fish. That's why tilapia is a big fish in Trinidad. And by the time Nyerere went back to Tanzania, the Caribbean delegation began to have problems going to Tanzania. And in the end, representatives of the state, right, represented the Caribbean at the 6th Pan-African Congress. It was a betrayal by some elements in the United States. We later found out that one of the guys of Caribbean origin who was part of the organizing committee, he was actually one of the agent of the state, a CIA agent or something like that, right? And so they sabotaged the Caribbean delegation and prevented it from going to the 6th Pan-African Congress. So this is not anything new. This is why I said it's about power. It's not anything new. The revolutionary movement comes up with these ideas about transformation. How do we change the society, whether it's reparations or black power or revolutionary socialism or revolutionary democracy. And then they are infiltrated in various ways. I'll give you another idea from the other side. When the Black Power movement emerged in the Caribbean, you had an organization called Socialist International, right? That emerged, on which Michael Manley played a critical role as part of I think was the secretary of one of those. But in that Socialist International was also the president of Venezuela, Carlos Andres Perez, and a lot of moderate politicians, right, who mounted what you call radical rhetoric, but were not really radical. But this was to displace the radicalism that was emerging in the Caribbean. You understand, this revolutionary radicalism. So now you had the Caribbean delegation being banned from the 6th Pan-African Congress, which would have given them an international platform to share their views. And then you have this new so-called radicalism done by Socialist International, which was based in Europe with guys like Olof Palme from Sweden and I think Willy Brandt from Germany and so on. So this is part of it. Every time we begin a movement to empower ourselves, something comes up that attempts to distract you from the goal or to co-opt it into something else that makes it deviate from the path that it is supposed to go on, which is the empowerment of the people. In fact, Professor Hilborn was coined a wonderful phrase that I have used a lot. And he used it to describe Errol Barrow of Barbados. He said Barrow was pro-worker, but not pro-working class. And what he meant is that a lot of these people could identify with the grassroots. Say Barrow would go in campaign, would go in somebody's house and eat, in a poor person's house and eat, meat from the pot and eat food and so on. But as a class, he did not want the workers to be empowered. He wanted the elites to be in power, and then they decide how the workers should be. And so this is a continuing pattern of what I think is Lenin or the bourgeois taking over the movement and redirected it. And the last statement I'll make on this is what a Russian writer said about the French Revolution. He said, when the people stormed the Bastille, they were fighting for the right to participate in the affairs of the state. Instead, what they got was the right to vote. The right to vote and the right to participate in the process are not the same thing. And this is why we always have to be careful when we are in movements, how we define this issue of power, who controls it, how it is to be utilized. Because what we have in the Caribbean is the right to vote, but we do not have the right to participate in a meaningful way in the affairs of our society.
Wow, 2 response really give we one lot to think about. We have to go to a break. But when we come back, I definitely want to know, what have we learned from what has happened in the past? Because the movement capture the state, capture the elite, continues, cooptation continues. So either we didn't know the stories from the past, we're not studying the stories from the past, we're not learning from those lessons to do something different for this to stop. So we have to take one quick break. We have Brother Mutota, co-host, Sister Esther, Xosei, Reparationist, representing the Caribbean diaspora. On over 2025, we've been focusing on the Caribbean. And I think quite often we forget about the Caribbean diaspora sometimes. So once I say Caribbean diaspora, no say I go for Sister Esther. So stay tuned. We'll hear the question we asked there. And as soon as we come back, we're going to get into that in our last segment. Stay tuned.
At Benny's, we have tiles to match any decor, whether it's classic, modern, or bold. Visit a Benny's store near you to meet with a sales representative that will assist you in calculating and selecting the right tiles for your floors and walls. Choose from our vast assortment of colors, textures, styles, and finishes. The perfect tile for every space at a price that can't be beat. Whether you're renovating your kitchen or finishing your ideal office space, Benny's Tile Gallery has it all. Benny's, quality and savings.
Want all the postpaid perks without the commitment? Now you can with Smart Supercharged prepaid plans. All the talk, text, and data you need. No contracts, no hassle. Pay upfront for your package and enjoy total freedom. No commitments. Just simple, flexible plans that fit your life. Pick your power, Core, Edge, or Prime. Prepaid plans, ready when you ready. Commit to no commitments and get yours today. Dial 7526 or star 100 pound key, use the Smart app, or visit a Gimme Dollar agent to purchase today. Smart, bringing people together.
I encourage you to take good care of your device. Cherish them because they have great value, not just in dollars, but in what they represent. Opportunity, trust, investment in your future. Treat them responsibly and make the most of every chance they bring to help you grow and succeed in life.
Use these Chromebooks. They're a tool. And this tool can get you around the world very fast. Please utilize it so that in the next 10 years, in the next 15 years, right from here, right from amongst you guys, we will have the next Minister of Rural Transformation and the next Minister of Education right here from Toledo again.
As we hand over these digital devices here in Toledo, we reaffirm our belief that education is not just a government priority. It is a national mission. Together through Plan Belize and programs such as Future Skills for the Future, we are shaping a Belize that is better prepared, more connected, and more empowered than ever before.
At Atlantic Bank, your convenience is our priority. Our contact center is designed to enhance your banking experience. With a wide range of customer service options, you save time and effort. You can easily call in to block or unblock your debit and credit cards, perform account inquiries, and access detailed card information. Whether you need assistance with online banking, merchant support, or general inquiries, our team is ready to help. For added convenience, if all operators are busy, you can leave your number and an operator will return your call as soon as possible to ensure you receive the support you need. Depending on your transaction type, we may need to verify your identity through a set of security questions. And remember, Atlantic Bank will never request your username or password for Atlantic Online via phone call, text, or email, ensuring your personal information remains safe and secure. Our support team is available Monday to Friday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. in both English and Spanish. Simply dial 223-1212. This is a dedicated line for our contact center. Atlantic Bank is committed to providing you with exceptional service and the tools you need to manage your finances conveniently and securely. Take full advantage of our easy-to-use contact center services today.
Atlantic Bank, building the future together.
Guatemala. Follow me now. This a the we we da figure. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a me. My name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. So don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the help on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. Country bad love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. This a we da fear. Nobody give it to no area. 110% Belize and proud of it. So don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the help on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. Country bad love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. This a we da fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This a we da fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a me. My name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. So don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the help on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. Country bad love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. This a we da fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This a we da fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a me. My name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. So don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the help on the Belize and dollar because no Guatemala. Follow me now. This a we da fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a me. My name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. So don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the help on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad love them homeland. Will never
back to the final segment of Sunday Review. Sister YaYa, Brother Akka, Sister Esther. We're talking about cooptation, infiltration of groups, organizations by the state or by a particular organization in the region. Sister Esther, after listening to all I want to say, drink break and I want to find air because drink break will have some juicy reasonings too. What lessons have we not learned as a people who fight for genuine liberation of our people?
History is repeating itself because we've had fractures in our movements, and for me it's about where some of the fractures have occurred is in the intergenerationality of our movements, because movements are often intergenerational. You have new players, new forces, but literally resurrecting, renewing ideas that have gone before and that maybe have to be tried out again or reinvigorated for our times. And when I listen to Brother Akko speak, I hear so much of what I was introduced to when I joined reparations movements, and in particular I have been involved in the international social movement for African reparations, but I'm also very conscious that many people younger than me are not necessarily talking about a movement, and the movements that they're talking about when they do use that terminology are new movements. They're not movements that are about taking power and transforming power, redistributing wealth and power and resources in a society so that we can live our lives, in a better way. That we're not fighting just for ideas, we're fighting so that we can, move our lives forward. We can take our lives forward in some better way, not just for us, but for our children and our children's children. And I think the breakages between the generations and also the lessons that we can learn, say from, earlier movements, Black Power movements, earlier Pan-African movements, earlier anti-colonial movements, that much of what we're doing today is an outgrowth of. Reparations is not a new movement. It might be a term that people are using more and more, but essentially the roots of reparations come out of Pan-African movements, and I mean the movements around Pan-Africanism that were about anti-imperialism, that were anti-colonial. It wasn't just about us taking over the levers of states so that we could carry on that same machinery in a way that was never ever designed to benefit the masses of our people. So that is one of the key problems, and I think one of the things that's missing that from movement spaces is I'm aware from previous generations of organizers that there was a lot of education, consciousness raising. There was ideological orientation, political education. There was discussions about the nature or groundings with our people, about the nature of the kind of changes that we wanted to see in society. You very rarely hear that in relation to some of the more kind of contemporary formulations of movements that are becoming popularized. For instance, say around reparations, which is a key movement that I am, and there's not one reparations movement, to be very clear, but this point that has been raised by Brother Akko around what are, despite our ideological and political and other kind of differences, and the diversity with that, what is it that we can agree on? What are the the 5, 10, 15 points that we agree can unite us? And that is where we're not making space, or where we're seeing a proliferation, I think, of individualism. So we're now in an age, especially with the way in which technology has become more accessible, of the cult of the individual, influencers and so forth, rather than collectivities and movements, which are still very much dominating, I think, our social change efforts and economic justice efforts in the countries of origin and the regions that we have come from, whether that be in Africa, in the wider Americas or YaYa, or even specifically the Caribbean. And so those are some of the things that I think are missing, and certainly not happening as much that used to happen before, which is why there isn't clarity. And I think what we've also seen is this dumbing down, this anti-intellectualism that has become very much popularized with the rise of social media. So people are TikTok surfing, or on, whatever it is, Instagram or what have you. And unless it's in a 2-minute soundbite, then people think, oh no, it's too heavy, it's too deep. And therefore, I think the discipline, the mental, cognitive discipline to just even sit with a text, or even to sit in a discussion that might be more than 10 minutes or even half an hour or even an hour, to really grapple and reason with what people are saying. That is something that I think people are losing the capacity to engage with. And I think it's a real problem. I don't think we can really change society and change the world if we don't have a high consciousness, if there isn't a strong focus on learning, relearning, if there isn't a strong focus on what ideological and what other kind of class positions that there are in a society around a particular issue, because of the way that society is stratified. So this is what you often don't hear talk about. You don't hear talk about class in, if you're kind of younger than a certain, I don't know, maybe under 40-year-olds in a lot of our, African heritage struggles. You don't hear this clarity of analysis that, for instance, was there in our movements, I'd say up until the 90s, in between the 60s and the 90s in particular. But I know the reparations movements that were proliferating in the 90s, the whole language and discourse is totally different to what I hear people talking about today, which today it's very much about an assimilation to a dominant economic or political model. It's not about transformation. It's not about revolution. People just feel that we have to kind of acquiesce to the system and the world that it is. And I think that vision and that kind of expression of what in certain circles we might call the Black radical imagination, which is a political imagination around how we structure society and how we reorganize society and the kind of changes that we need to see in society. There's less and less spaces for that. And where those conversations are happening, it's very much about aesthetics, it's about somatics, it's not about transforming the material conditions of society and the power structures actually that govern our lives.
Ooh, I would definitely encourage listeners and viewers to go back and go listen to this conversation again and share this link, share this link, share this link. Big messaging. Brother Ako, what are some lessons we have not learned? You might not, Ian. Idiano.
Yeah. What we have not learned, the favorite phrase, what it is, those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it. And I think it was Lenin who said, history repeats itself as tragedy the first time, and the second time as fast. And so the two things here, our history, we have disconnected ourselves from the study of our history. We have. Even our most recent history. I mean, I had a bookstore, and you would have people would come in and you didn't mistake Martin Luther King for, one of the older guys in the struggle. And this is how disconnected we are in terms of our own history. And the points that I was making, up to the 90s, we had those discussions. You go to a Pan-African discussion now and talk about class, they might throw you outside of the discussion because nobody wants to discuss the class analysis because the elites control this thing. You were asking me that this morning, and yesterday my wife was telling me, she said, you read Obama from day one. I was never a supporter of Barack Obama. I always knew Obama was a tool of imperialism, capitalism, and the ruling class. So and because I grew up in the Caribbean, when I came to the US, and people were talking about the first black man to do this and the first black man, while I understood the psychological impact of this, I told them I grew up under a black prime minister, a black chief justice, black commissioner of police. So first black to do this didn't have any impact on my consciousness. But this is what they sell you. Like yesterday, I took a relative, an older relative of mine, to something we had to do. And we passed by Red Lobster. And she said, isn't that black guy who buy Red Lobster? No, I know exactly what she's talking about. There's a black guy of Nigerian descent who was running PF Chang, the big Chinese restaurant, and right, and they put him in the media as this genius of management. And I think now he runs Red Lobster. But he is disproportionately promoted to give us a veneer of success. And so in too many instances, we are looking at, as I told you before, the black faces in high places and not looking at the ideological, like this idiot in Britain called Lamy. I mean, I have listened to this guy. This guy is a fool. You understand? But I'm thinking, oh, he's from the Caribbean. I don't care. This man is, let me not talk about this guy. Right? This guy fits every stereotype that they tell about that white people have over black people. You understand what I'm saying? And we are caught up with this black faces in high places achievement paradox, forgetting our history. And so Obama did that to us. He pretended to inherit and propagate the ideas of Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement. When the fundamental the fundamental statement Obama made, we missed it. I didn't miss it. He did an interview one time, and they asked him if he became president, which president he would most likely be like. And you know who he said? Ronald Reagan. And that should have told all of us what we needed to know about Obama. But my friends were like, oh, you saw the president come with his black swagger and the black man walk and all of this trivia that Obama was the man who facilitated Africa in Africa. All the worst things against black people. And because we do not have an ideological approach, as Sister Esther said, we are not educating each other. Because a lot of us are enamored by capitalism and neoliberalism. So anytime we talk about class, we don't want to hear about it. We talk about capitalism, we don't want to hear about it. And we have to go back to these debates because at the end of it all, slavery was a capitalist project. It was an economic capitalist project that evolved. You know, Dr. Adu, the Ghanaian scholar, made one of the most profound statements of that. He said these systems are about perpetuity and adjustment. So the chattel slave condition and people revolted, the Europeans said, you know, we have to make some adjustments. Let's call it, let's pass an Emancipation Proclamation. Remember the sister who came from Tobago and said Tobago had a different view of emancipation because it didn't mean much to them, Sister YaYa, if you remember that, right? So she gave a perspective of emancipation, how they saw it in Tobago, which was different from Trinidad. But it was always maintaining the economic order and perpetuating it and making adjustments. And this is where we are. So we move from colonialism to flag independence, but again, it is perpetuating the economic order. And so we need to educate ourselves about these things in order to advance our cause. And if we don't assess imperialism, assess capitalism, right, assess neoliberalism in the context of our struggles of reparations, Pan-Africanism, we'll be making a fundamental mistake, and history will repeat itself as a farce or maybe as a tragedy again.
Big respect, heights of reasoning. Let me get Sister Esther and Brother Akko. Final thoughts, we have another 8 minutes. But I really value the time too on a tech for define what cooptation is, to recognize, Sister Esther was right on point. I always support sharing of knowledge, education, debates, reasoning. But the point Sister Esther make about the short-term span, especially of the younger generation, when it comes to influencers and truly not having the skill set or really not having the capacity for engage for an extended period of time on reasoning or listening, just actively listening to learn, and how quick a number of young people disengage. And even the one with colonial papers, that those particular skill sets to be critical thinkers are truly not being nurtured within these miseducation institutions. And of course, we are always valued, Brother Akko, having the lived experience and the life skills and the memory for make connection. And like Sister Esther said, this gap intergenerationally, which we want to change. And so the importance of having an ideology is critical. And even when we disagree, which we human we disagree, that we find areas of agreement. So final thoughts, Sister Esther Xosei, Reparationist, representing the Caribbean Diaspora out of the UK, and Brother Mutota from the twin islands of Trinidad and Tobago.
I just wanted to clarify that the comments I made about this sort of anti-intellectualism is not just about young people. In fact, I've met many young people who are engaging in some of those best practices and consciousness raising and being, very politically astute and reading some of the ideas of previous leaders, that they are inspired by and trying to bring their ideas back. And in fact, some of the older ones are the ones who are becoming less kind of inclined to engage with some of these ideas, maybe because they themselves haven't lived them. Or have betrayed them or what have you. So that's one point I wanted to make. The other one is that one of the things that I think is different is that there is so much fragility. We often hear the term white fragility, right? But there is so much fragility now amongst people, so that even when we raise contradictions, when we raise issues of class, say with me as an African reparationist, and this thing about all our skin folk are not kinfolk, and being, analytical and being critically analytical about who leaders are and what they are really promoting, oftentimes that is resisted because it's deemed to somehow be about not promoting unity. And so that is one of the huge limitations and differences I see in contemporary organizing, whereby there is so much fragility, whereby if you don't agree with what one of the popular leaders that are being promoted in the corporate media as somehow a state actor on reparations, everything is about what they say. And when you give a thinking person's perspective, when you give a perspective from, well, whose interest is it serving, you're deemed to be somehow spoiling things. And there's attempts to shut you down and shut you out. And that happens in very, very tangible ways. You don't get invited into certain spaces. People try and organize around you and about you without you in terms of the constituencies that you represent and that you serve. And that's a huge, huge problem in the way in which we're being forced into a kind of unipolarism, which is going counter to just like world influences that are very much about multipolarity and pluriversality, but there is this attempt to force us into one way of thinking and seeing the world. And that is how imperialism, I think, is sort of maintaining a foothold and gaining ground, despite the fact that obviously there's lots of anti-imperialist organizing and movements that are rising at the same time.
Big thanks, Sister Esther, for that correction. It's not just young people, it's people of all ages, and especially the older people or middle-aged or who've been there for a while and become gatekeepers and supporters of capitalism and imperialism. Brother Akko?
Yes, she's absolutely correct. I would give a talk when people talk about the bling culture in America, with the young people and the bling culture. And I explained to them, the people who started the bling culture wasn't the young people. It was the first set of blacks who went to the middle class. That's who started the bling culture. It's like the nouveau riche in the French Revolution. When they fought, they condemned the aristocrats. And overthrew the aristocrats. And when they came into power through the revolution, they imitated the worst behavior of the aristocrats. That's how the term nouveau riche became a political term that described people who were politically dysfunctional. So that's what has happened to us. Our nouveau riche is just as anti-intellectual, and they are passing that down to the young people, right? The other point I want to make relative to what Sister said about they marginalize you. They do. It is called orthodoxy. We have imposed an orthodoxy on ourselves. I'll give you an example. I went to a conference on Black Power in one university here in Georgia, right? And it dealt with how the term Black Power was coined, and it was said in Lawrence County, Alabama, where they were doing voter registration. And this guy got up and he said, well, look, we have to be careful because it wasn't in Lawrence County, it was somewhere like 2 months. And I was listening to this debate taking place. I said to the guy, this is orthodoxy. What doesn't matter if it was coined in Lawrence County or Behalf, or what does it matter? The fact that it came about and it is a movement. And so we impose this orthodoxy on ourselves that we can't, and whenever you impose orthodoxy, you become fossilized. This is what happened with the Soviet Union. You become fossilized and you implode on yourself. And we need to move away from this orthodoxy because that is part of our problem while our movement is not moving forward. We have to move away from this orthodoxy, right? We don't have any popes in the Pan-African movement, but some people would like a pope who will then be the person to determine what is the catechism. There is no catechism. That's what we're trying to break. That's what our revolution is trying to break, right? And move and create ideas that will then bloom, that will lead us towards liberation. So we have to destroy this orthodoxy.
Big thanks, Brother Akko, Sister Esther Xosei, Reparationist, representing the Caribbean Diaspora out of the UK. Brother Akko Mutota from the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. We have to acknowledge our security guard, Shane Flowers at Creme Radio, Larry Guerrero at XTV, Sister Christy Flowers, and her assistant, Kirsty. I have to, before I go, I just have to quickly recognize, so notice I have our new jewelry, right, and show off, right? These are wooden earrings made from mahogany, and these are bracelets made from mahogany. Gorgeous. Now, they were made in the Belize district by the jeweler Alan Jones. He's in booth 14, the Alton Ha. And I have to thank my sister Beverly Longsworth for make the hookup. So I had to tell her no. It's affordable. The artistry is top of the line. So if you don't want wooden jewelry, that's who I recommend. Now, on the no side, I don't advertise the people. But if I book my everyday people and then do meaningful work, I want big me up. So on a center earring, right? And let me share, they were gifts to me. At a time when they have a low vibration day, and I'm just like, Creator, thank you. I could not live without community supporting me, especially when I need it. So make sure no path for go. Enter on one, and I'll have to ask her if I could give out the number next time, and I give her the number, and then I could call her. If I don't want I want to know the time of the year they can want to like spend money. It's our perfect opportunity for get one unique gift, very Belizean. It's from mahogany. You can't go wrong with it. And this show will repeat at 5:30 on XTV local channel. You can go at any time to XTV Belize Facebook page, XTV Belize YouTube channel. Share the link, share the link, share the link. Brother Akko Mutota, Sister Esther Xosei, thanks so much for the time. This was really a revolutionary and needed conversation. And I thank both of you for the sacrifices you have made. Continue for Meg. There are two people, two different gender, two different timeline when they were born, who have genuinely dedicated the majority of their lives to the liberation of African people. They were dead before they sell we out. Believe that. So if you don't know nobody else, remember them 2 years so here, and that's why I keep them close to my heart. Love no bad.
I'm too old to change.
Thank you. Thank you.
Until next Sunday. Oh, thanks to Most High that changed my slogan now. It's not only the people who want to save the people. Only organized people want to save the people.
Yes, true.
Thank
all right,
you.
good to see you again, Sister
All
Esther.
right, take care. Blessings.
Okay.
See you.
Nice to
All
say
right.
Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time me name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master, talking about the head and the billies and dollar. Because patriots, all people who love them country bad love them homeland.